feel like we've got a pretty good distance here, so I hope you all feel safe. Yeah, okay, good. All right. Are we live? Okay, we've got a pretty good distance here, so I hope you all feel safe. Yeah, okay, good. Where is that coming from? Are we live? Okay, we've got a pretty good distance here, so I hope you all feel safe. Okay, friends on the internet, bear with us. We've got an echo coming through in the room here. We're going to take care of that before we get started. Yes, friends on the internet, bear with us. We've got an echo coming through in the room here. We're going to We're on an echo searching mission. Where is that silly echo coming from? We're on an echo searching mission. Oh boy. Okay, well, I'll just keep on singing until we know for sure, 'cause the echo's probably 3 or 4 seconds after I say what I'm saying or sing what I'm singing. No echo? We might have got it. I have this love-hate relationship with technology.
We all do.
I think we all do, yeah.
We love it.
My son's an IT guy, and he also has those kinds of feelings too. You think the IT guys went in that because they love the stuff, right? And Kevin, let me know when you feel like we've got it. We do? Okay, well, welcome friends here in the room. Welcome friends out there in Cyberland on Zoom or on the internet. Thank you so much for joining us. I'd like to offer a special invitation for the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas and all the holy beings to come and join us today for Dharma, to inspire each and every one of us to receive the Dharma in exactly the way that we need to hear it right now. So the title of my talk, I actually have a title for my talk. That rarely happens, but it's called The Wanting Mind with a Solid Self. So that's where we're going to go today. And we're going to start out with the, that craving, the quote, the craving is the builder of this house. And the Buddha talks about the self as a house builder that keeps recreating itself and building itself over and over and over again. And so we're going to start with that one. Put to music. Make sure I'm in tune. This tuning is also a beautiful Dharma metaphor, because when we're working on the middle path, we're aiming for the middle path here. And if it's too loose, we're going to be just a little bit flat in everything we do if we're too loose with ourselves. If we're too tight with ourselves, we're going to be sharp. Doesn't that sound, the word flat and the word sharp, doesn't that really sound like how we are when we're too hard on ourselves? We're sharp, we hurt, we got edges. But when we're too lax with ourselves, we're kind of limp and flat. I'm so spoiled because I used to have to tune by ear. That's another beautiful metaphor for the Dharma. Because before I found the Dharma, I used to have to braille my way through what is skillful and what is not skillful, what is hurtful and what is unbeneficial versus what is beneficial and kind. And it was like a brailing situation, and I was always falling off to one side or the other. I was always flat or I was always sharp. But the Dharma came into my life, the electronic tuner, and when you're right on, it turns green. And the same thing I find is true of the Dharma. When I come to that middle path, there's this like an easing of the tension, even in the body, but definitely an easing of the tension in the mind. And so there's our musical metaphor. Craving is the builder of this house. Craving is the builder of this house. Through many a rebirth in samsara wandering, I sought but did not find the builder of this house. How painful, how sorrowful to be born again and again. Craving is the builder of this house. Craving is the builder of this house. Oh, house builder, I see you at last. You will build your house no more. Your ridge pole is shattered, your rafters all fall down. My mind realizes the unborn, and craving comes, craving comes, craving comes to an end. Craving is the builder of this house. Craving is the builder of this house. That craving mind, that wanting mind, that sense of a solid self. And it builds itself over and over again until we see it. And once we see it, it's a lot like those PowerPoint things where there's one in the PowerPoint where you can set it to where instead of just going from one page to the other or fading out, it actually crumbles into pixels and falls away. And that's kind of how seeing the mind rebuilding itself over and over again, that's kind of how that works. So I want to give you another song, just because songs are fun and they're a good way to get started. And they have messages that we hear with a different part of our brain. When we hear it through music, it goes in a different way. And the thinking mind, the judging mind, the one who would say, well, I maybe don't really agree with that, it doesn't do that. It just kind of absorbs. And if something really runs against its grain, it doesn't judge it. It just kind of doesn't really hear it. So it's kind of beautiful because you hear just what you need to hear. So, do you want to get away from what you don't like? try to hold on to the good stuff with all of your might. Do you notice personal preferences in your life? Do you cling to your expectations real tight? Well, how's that working for you? How's that working for you? Well, the Buddha said the middle path is just what we need to hold the pleasant and painful equally, pointing to a deep balance right in between. There's equanimity. There's equanimity. So come on and walk it out. Stay on the path, not just in your thinking, but in how you act. Desire and aversion on either side, but in that middle space, what you will find is peace of mind, peace of mind. In that middle space, there's peace of mind, peace of mind, peace of mind, equanimity brings peace of mind. When voices raise and when people fight, do you get sucked in, even just in your mind? When you're watching the news, does it burn you inside? When your plans fall apart, do you get really fried? It's time to wake up to equanimity. Time to wake up to equanimity. So come on and walk it out. Stay on the path, not just in your thinking, but in how you act. Desire and aversion on either side, but in that middle space, what you will find is peace of mind, peace of mind. In that middle space, there's peace of mind, peace of mind, peace of mind, equanimity brings peace of mind. Yes, equanimity brings peace of mind. So, craving for things to be other than they are in this moment is the root of suffering. Wanting more of that which we find pleasant, or less, or none of what we find unpleasant. This is what we mean by craving, or clinging, or the wanting mind. We recognize one who craves. We imagine we are a solid self. We identify with our stuff as mine. We think by accumulating stuff, we'll attain happiness. I think we've all had an experience of like when you get the new car. And it does, it brings us a form of happiness. There's a pleasantness that comes along with it. And it lasts less time than the new car smell. That fades away slower than the satisfaction that we get from having yet another wonderful, pleasant object in our lives. There's a real danger in this wanting mind when we kind of think that it's maybe insignificant, it's not that big of a deal, but it is a very big deal. And so I'm going to give you another metaphor. And as you hear this story, be thinking of yourself as the monkey. We've all heard the story of the monkey, that when the hunters are hunting to kill these monkeys for food, they put food in a jar, that when the monkey's hand is like this, she can reach in and she can grab that piece of food. But as soon as she's got her hand around the food, her fist makes it too large to be able to pull out of the jar. And the jar is either tethered or so heavy that the monkey can't move the jar. And they won't let go. This is a practical way to hunt monkeys, because they won't give up that food and people can come and kill them. And instead of going, I'm letting go and getting away and saving their lives, they don't do that. They just cling. Their wanting mind is coded so hard for them. And that's one of the lower realms, the hell realm, the hungry ghost realm, and the animal realm. Those three lower realms. And the animals fall victim to their wanting mind, and they don't really have a choice there. They're coded by their instincts, and they don't have a choice. Humanity is a different sort of animal. We have a choice. We can choose to let go of that wanting mind. Just let it go. We'll find another way. And we always do. When we let it go, the suffering does fall away. So, but this concept of a solid self, this is actually an illusion. There is no solid, separate self. We aren't apart from one another. We're all in this together on one level. I want to read you a little bit from Eckhart Tolle's book called A New Earth. And this is from page 27 in A New Earth. And he says, when you live in a world deadened by mental abstraction, you don't see the aliveness of the universe anymore. Most people don't inhabit a living reality, but a conceptualized one. We're no longer experiencing in this moment. We're building a mental conception of this moment. But we cannot really honor things if we use them as a means to self-enhancement. That is to say, if we try to find ourselves through them. This is exactly what the ego does. Ego identification with things creates attachment to things, obsession with things, which in turn creates our consumer society and economic structures where the only measure of progress is always more. Boy, doesn't that make sense when you look at what we hear about our economy, and that we want an ever enlarging economy. That's just not how things work. It's not realistic. The dysfunction, the cancerous cell manifests, whose only goal is to multiply itself, unaware that it is bringing about its own destruction by destroying the organism of which it is a part. Some some economists are so attached to the notion of growth that they can't let go of that word. So they refer to recession as a time of negative growth. A large part of many people's lives is consumed by an obsessive preoccupation with things. This is why one of the ills of our time is object proliferation. When you cannot feel the life that you are likely to fill up your life with things. As a spiritual practice, I suggest that you investigate your relationship with the world of things through self-observation, and in particular, things that are designed with the word my or mine. You need to be alert and honest to find out, for example, whether your sense of self-worth is bound up with the things you possess. Do certain things induce a subtle feeling of importance or superiority? And here, you have to be extremely open and honest with yourself. And I will tell you from personal experience, when you first start doing that, it's very uncomfortable. You're almost ashamed of yourself in front of yourself. You're not doing this in front of anybody else, and yet you feel embarrassed by it. Just know that if you get to that point where you feel the shame or the embarrassment about how much selfing you see going on, hey, you just took a giant step on the path to getting rid of self. Does the lack of them make you feel inferior to others who have more than you? Can you casually mention, or do you casually mention things you own or show them off to increase your sense of worth in someone else's eyes and through them in your own eyes? Do you feel resentful or angry and sometimes diminished in your sense of self when someone else has more than you or when you lose a prized possession? I love Eckhart Tolle because he really pushes us to that place of just get real with yourself, stop running from it, just look at it. Do it in private, don't do it in public. When you do it in private, you make your first steps. Eventually, it falls away enough to where you can do it in public. And then it falls away enough to where you can even tell Panawati, when you see me selfing, call me on it. And I don't care if it's in front of the whole Sangha. And because you've pared away enough self to where embarrassment and shame are no longer part of the picture. Now it's only gratitude for a wake-up call. And sometimes we have good, like Kalyanamita, Dharma brothers and sisters who are willing, especially if our spouse has a practice too, that really helps because we can call each other on it. And if we've already got the agreement, call me on it. Then even if you're frustrated or angry when she calls you on it, or he calls you on it, or they call you on it, you don't get triggered by it. You don't go off on them right there. And sometimes to begin with, you do. Because I remember when I invited Richard to do that for me, and he would very gently and very kindly do it. And boy, I would be angry at him and frustrated with him, and sometimes sharp words would come out. And so it takes practice. And so I highly recommend Eckhart Tolle is one of those teachers who doesn't have any particular wisdom tradition, but truth is truth no matter what portal it comes through. When we read the Bible, we can get that sense of the real truth that's shining through there. Not in every piece of scripture, but in certain ones. Obviously, in the suttas, we're all here because we see truth shining through the suttas. It also comes through people without any wisdom tradition at all, but who have a deep connection with truth. Eckhart Tolle is one of those. Krishnamurti is another one of those. So feel free to enrich your practice wherever you find the truth. Invite that in. Use it. Okay, so there's a try this. And this is part of that wisdom from Eckhart Tolle. Attend to a sound for a moment. Let's do that together. Just here in the environment, do we hear a sound? Now ask yourself this inner question: what or who is aware of this sound? Not what's perceiving the sound, that's the ear. What or who is aware of the sound? Do you feel it? Do you feel that infinite largeness that is aware? That's what we're talking about. Freedom from self, right there. All that is necessary is to abandon the clinging to a solid self. And to the degree that we can do that, the craving and clinging for all other things, beliefs, fixed ideas, etc., will thin and disappear as well. And sometimes the process is so gradual that we don't even realize that it's happened until we get hit with a big test and we realize, wow, I ordinarily, this kind of thing would have thrown me right off my center and I would be stressing. And yet, I'm not. Those little landmarks, those little places where you get the big test and your practice shines through in such a way that you don't react the way that you used to. Number one, it's a great freedom from suffering. Number two, it's encouragement because you know you're making progress. And number three, there's so much less self there. It's become transparent. We will still experience all the richness of life. The wonderful stuff is still wonderful. The horrible is still horrible. But we just see it isn't me. It isn't personal. It's just what it is. It means that there is no longer a grasping or craving for things to be other than they are in this moment. There is no attachment. And therefore, there is no suffering. Someone who models that so beautifully for us is Panadipa. And if you ask Panadipa, are you enlightened? Because boy, does he look enlightened, right? And he'll tell you, no, I'm not enlightened, but I'm not suffering. That self is so transparent in Deepa. I'm sure he's still got his animal body there, his human animal. I'm sure there's probably those little things that come up for him, but he doesn't buy into it anymore. And so you don't feed it, it dissolves. When we're stuck in the identification with the I, me, and mine, we are believing what we think. A good example of this wrongful clinging to our belief is the perception on the horizon. Look out on the ocean at the horizon. We thought the world was flat at one time. Our eyes told us there was an end out there. Our problem is that the untrained mind does not see things as they truly are. And this brings about the craving and the suffering. It's not about getting rid of stuff. It's not about what we have or what we don't have. It's about the mental construct that we see them as mine. We see them as mine because of the mental construct of me, a separate self, apart from everything else. So there's nothing wrong with having all the wonderful things in the world. Where it becomes a hindrance to us is when there's an attachment to those things. If we are millionaires, we have a lot of our money in the market, and then the market plunges and we lose that money. We freak out and we sell. And we are no longer a millionaire. Now we're a middle-class American. In that moment, if there's pangs in the heart, if there's an uncomfortableness, if we feel a great sadness around it, if we feel a deep sense of loss, maybe even a little grief around it, there's your solid self. That's the only one who feels that. If you go, well, it was a gamble, I had it in the market, and look what happened. Wonder what will happen next. Will I get it back? Will I be able to play that game again? Do I choose not to put things in the market? Next time, will I invest in property? You can still even be in that material world mindset. If there's not attachment, then the self is pared away in that moment. Not that it won't resurface in another. You could lose one thing and go, well, that's the way it is, by golly, and no suffering. But if you were to lose this thing, then there's big suffering. I could lose all my money in the world. And I could say, well, at least I've got my health, you know. But if my husband dies, I may not be able to say, I send you off with great love. See you on the other side. I might have to spend months grieving. That isn't because I loved him so much. That's because I was attached to him in a physical form. That's still something. Now, having said that, and especially those of you out there, don't hear this that I'm saying when someone you love dies, you're supposed to just go, well, that's the way it is, by golly, and go on with your life like nothing happened. I am not saying that. The human animal is not you. It is an animal that we have. Our unconditioned self has a symbiotic relationship with this human animal. This human animal is going to miss that other human animal. It's just part of being in this world of samsara. And so, if when these waves of grief come, which is exactly how we move through that grief, is through the waves. And then we cry or we do whatever it is. We go to nature, whatever it is we do to heal our human animal when he, she, or they are suffering. And, and so honoring that is a deep respect that our unconditioned self can do. It can, okay, I get it. When I get intense, I tear up. And so I'm going to tear up as I talk to you about this. I just lost my son-in-law to COVID about a month ago. And to feel the grief, it still comes up. You can see it still comes up in my human animal. She misses him. She misses all the opportunities and has a little remorse. I thought we had more time. I didn't get to know my boy anywhere near as much as I wished I had him. And had I known he would die at 50 years old, I would have made the time. And so the human animal feels that grief and she cries. But my unconditioned self, out of compassion, recognizes that if you're going to move through this, little human animal, you're going to have to honor and feel the steps to clear the grief. And so if you need to cry, if you need to feel that big run-shaped empty hole in your life, then feel it and feel your way through it. Cry when you need to, celebrate the good times when you need to. But remember, we are not our human animal. There is no solid self. So we honor the illusion because that's the compassionate thing to do. So we honor it. And when our illusory self is having a hard time, we can hold her or him or they. We can just hold them in a place of compassion and love and say, I got your back, baby. You just melt down if that's what you need to do. It has to be handled with compassion. So, but that attachment, the reason I have a ron-shaped hole in my life is because I'm attached. And I'm attached to what didn't happen too, you know? And so knowing that, it doesn't come up in that way as much for me now. And I can feel it fade away. And I can even feel the presence of that beautiful being on the other side of a veil from time to time. And I know there's no problem here. There's nothing wrong. So COVID took my boy. COVID's taken a lot of our kids, a lot of our parents. We're all in this together. And we can just support each other with compassion. Okay. So, let me take a look at our time. So looking closely at that what we think of as me or mine. And most of this pertains to the body and the mind. And what we are, our being or our personality, is composed of 5 different factors according to the Buddha. These are 5 aggregates of clinging. Their form or body, their feelings, such as pleasure, pain, or neither pleasure or pain. There's a neutral in there. They're the sensations. They're the physical sensations received from the form. And then the perceptions, the labels or identities we put on objects, thought, mental activity, and fabrications, intention, attention, evaluation of all the active processes in the mind, those perceptions. That's an interesting one. I remember falling out of the present moment due to my perceptions. The first time I went to the botanical gardens in St. Louis, beautiful botanical gardens. If you've never been there and you're traveling through, it's worth stopping. But the irises were all in bloom. And I went around and I would smell of each one of them. They all have a different fragrance. Their colors are different and their fragrances, according to what iris it is, are different. And instead of just being present with that experience, which was truly delightful and a little piece of heaven on earth, I got out my phone and I started photographing them and then photographing the name tag because I had every intention of getting online and finding an iris nursery and replicating this in my own garden. And so from that point on, I missed the experience. Now I was behind the camera trying to make it permanent. It's crazy what we do when this solid self, the wanting mind, is running the show. Okay, so another thing we want to look at here is breaking the link between the feeling tone, the pleasant and unpleasant, and the storyline of me. This is a great place to break that link. We got so much control if we can just remember to do it. So when I'm in that moment and I'm in the garden and I'm, excuse me, when I cry. Okay, so when we're in that moment, there's the perception, and in my case, that was a beautiful, pleasant perception. I was receiving, the senses was receiving the olfactory, and I was perceiving, the eyes were perceiving the colors. Every sense was involved. And had I just stopped it right there at the pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral place, if I could have named this pleasant and then just stayed with the pleasant, ride the wave of pleasant, I would have been mindful for the whole experience. But instead, I started spinning into a storyline. There was a me who had a garden, who wanted to make this permanent, and that self started running her story. And there it went, and I lost the experience. Do you see what I'm talking about? How if you stop it right there in that space where it's pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral, stop it there. And don't let it spin out into what will I do? Don't let that I, me, mine come on board. And you can even make a practice of watching your mental thinking every time you're, because we all have that inner dialogue that's going on all the time. And or monologue, depending on how many of you are in there. And but it's always going on. And there's the I don't like this. Oh, I wish we could. There's an I. Every time you hear your mind use the word I, me, or mine, allow that to be a flashing neon light that says danger, danger, Will Robinson, danger. You know, get it right there. And if you recognize that true danger, that is your monkey not letting go of that fruit so that she can save her life, you can stop it right there. Okay, let me take a look at our time. I want to be respectful of all of our time. So keep remembering to sense into the inner question. What is it that is aware of whatever this is? Now, I will tell you, the following year, I was new in my practice when I went to the Iris Garden the first time. But the following year, I had a year of practice under my belt, excuse me, and I already knew that that wasn't where I wanted to go with it. And so I used this very thing. What is it that's aware? Not the smell, that's the physical body there, that's a sensation there. What is it that's aware of this? And it takes us right where we went earlier today when we felt into that. What is it that's aware? It's simple, and it can even be easy. If you remember, the going to that space, that's not difficult. What's difficult is two things. Number one, remembering to do it. And number two, don't fall into the hindrance of doubt, because that's another nasty one that'll come on board, is the hindrance of doubt. That is the thinking mind taking its control back. That's the thinking mind sneaking in through the back door going, yeah, but you want to be, is it really, that doubt thing is another danger thing to. There's a big difference between doubt and discernment. Discernment, there's a clearer you that's looking at what's actually true. It's not judging, it's not putting value on it, it's just seeing what's actually true in this moment. So play with that. That's the invitation and the homework from today. I would like you all to take this home this week and be watching. Number one, this is a two-part homework. Number one, be watching when your mind talk uses the words I, me, or mine, and know that that's the spinning out, the strengthening, and the producing of the self, the wanting mind. That's where it's getting control over you. That's where it's running your life. So watch for that. And as soon as you look it in the eyes, it's an illusion. Once you look it in the eyes, it's like putting these things under an electronic microscope. There's really nothing here. We're mostly empty space. Between the atoms, it's mostly empty space. So this is a pretty powerful illusion. It's very convincing. And it can be fun to play with. We're here now. Might as well have a little fun with it. But don't believe the illusion. Okay, so watching for the I, me, and mine, and then knowing that that is the illusory self trying to run your life. And then number two is when you're in an unpleasant situation, it's easy to do this. What is it that's aware of this? It's easy to do that in a pleasant thing because you don't have afflictive emotions bubbling up. So play with the pleasant ones first, because it allows you to really drop into that space. And once you've done it, Venerable talks about when you first come to a new town, you don't know your way to the grocery store, and you have to actually get on your GPS and see the roads or look at a map and follow it through. And the map is not the territory, but it does help. And to begin with, you got to do that every time you go. But then after you've been there a while and you've done it enough times, you don't need it anymore. You can get in the car and you can go from here to the grocery store and you don't even remember the trip over because it's proceduralized at that point. And so this is the very same thing. The more you drop into the what is it that's aware of this in this moment, that you get used to that feeling and you know how to get there right now. And then once you feel like, yeah, I can drop into this space real easy, then invite yourself to work on the unpleasant. When something happens that triggers stress for you, when something happens that gets that judgmental mind on board, or the one who says there's a problem here, that guy is on board, then try to drop below that and see what is it that's aware of this unpleasant? What is it that is aware of this illusion of self up here, making up the storyline, making the problems for us? Okay? So there you go. That's it. And so I have a song I'd like to share with you. It comes from the Christian tradition, but Venerable Panawati and our beautiful choir take a lot of those beautiful praise and worship songs from the Christian tradition and tweak a word or two here or there. And all of a sudden they become Dharmic. And so this one, I love it. It's Tasha Cobbs who recorded this. And the song is called Gracefully Broken. And this is intense, so I'm going to tear up. It is so beautiful because it's about surrendering. We surrender that self to our unconditioned self, to the Dharma as it shines through. When there's no sense of self, we are like a crystal straw. And when there's self on board, it's kind of like we've sucked up a chocolate milkshake in that. And think of it as a glass crystal straw, completely transparent. And when the selfing's going on, we've sucked up that milkshake. And yeah, chocolate milkshake tastes really good. There's an attraction there. And yet, any of us who have studied health, we know that those things that are in that milkshake are not good for our body. They actually poison us. And so, and then look what the straw's like when you're done sucking up self in your crystal straw. If you let that hang out very long, it's going to dry in there. It's going to be really hard to get that straw clean again. But if you do not put that straw into this milkshake of self, if you just allow it to be there, set it into the glass of Dharma water, and what you suck up, this Dharma water is pure light. And what you're sucking up through that straw purifies you, transforms you, and the light of that radiates from your crystal straw out into the world. And so what I'd like to do with this song is I would like to invite you all to go to your meditative spot and to surrender, to offer your entire being up to the Dharma, to the light and love that is actually what you're truly made of at your deepest level. That's all we really are, is light and love. And so I ask you to, if you can go there with me, let's all take this song and let's surrender to the divine, whatever that is with us. The Dharma is the divine. So let's make this commitment to ourselves. With this song, we'll close out, and then I'll give you a musical dedication of merit to offer with me to all living beings. Take all I have in these hands and multiply all that I am and find my heart on the altar again. Set me on fire, set me on fire. Take all I have in these hands and multiply, yes, multiply all that I am and find my heart on the altar again. Set me on fire. Here I am, arms wide open, pouring out my life, gracefully broken. Here I am, arms wide open, pouring out my life, gracefully broken. My heart stands in awe of goodness, love stands strong to the end. Truth fulfills its purpose in me, joy won't forsake me. Here I am, arms wide open, pouring out my life, gracefully broken. Here I am, arms wide open, pouring out my life, gracefully broken. gracefully. I'm strong when I am weak. I will be free with truth and power in me. I'm broken gracefully. I'm strong when I am weak. I will be free with truth and power. I'm broken with truth and power. The self is broken gracefully. Here I am, arms wide open. I'm right here, pouring out my life. I'm gracefully broken. Gratefully broken. I love that song. What a beautiful song of surrender to the Dharma. And it's so empowering, letting go of the self. The difficulties of life, they're the fire that purifies the gold. To get pure gold, you got to melt it down. If you see the difficulties in your life as that fire purifying the dross of self off of the gold that you really are, you can do the difficulties with much more peace of heart and much more peace of mind. So let's dedicate our practice here today. And before we do that, I want to thank you all here in the room, and I want to thank all of you that are out there on the internet joining us for the Dharma. And I want to thank all of our holy beings, all of our Buddhas, and all of our Bodhisattvas for coming and being with us. It's been a beautiful session with you this morning, and I feel your beautiful hearts. This room is filled with a lovely energy right now. Thank you so much for your practice. And so we offer the merit of this practice we've done today and our homework throughout the week. May every living being, our minds as one and radiant with light, share the fruits of peace with hearts of goodness, luminous and bright. If people hear and see how hands and hearts can bind in giving unity, may our minds awaken to great compassion, wisdom, and to joy. May kindness find reward. May all who sorrow leave their grief and pain. May this boundless light break the darkness of their endless night. Because our hearts are one, this world of pain turns into paradise. May all become compassionate and wise. May all become compassionate and wise. Thank you. Take your Dharma into the world. Smile at a stranger. Bring some love. Delight in the good fortune of others. See you later, friends.